Papa Stalin rules in space. Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to what will shortly be a replay video, but I thought I'd share with you a little bit of previously live gameplay that I decided to record just because I've been having such a good time playing the game in my ultimate Soviet bias lineup that I've shared in a previous video. I told you that the premium Lend-Lease P63 is lots of fun, and I hope to show you in this video through the power of interpretive dance. Of course, that is a dance macabre in the skies over what is this third world hellhole we're in? I forget. Anyway, welcome back you all, and welcome to a bit of ground strike close air support in the 4X Fiddical Haven P63. I think this is a C5, but as far as the P63s go, I don't think there's a ton of variation in the models, except for the fact that the French get the nicest one. But you really aren't missing out on much with this aircraft other than some AP rounds for your 37mm and some extra ammo for the same. What you always have in these P63s is fantastic firepower in a versatile combination. You have the wing-mounted guns that can help you with spreading out your fire. That's right, not having all your rounds fly in a death beam of death can be helpful if you don't know exactly where to aim. Those wing-mounted guns can score some hits where more tightly converged ordnance will miss. And speaking of, you also have two 50 cals mounted on top of the engine cowling, so that you're firing, well, I should say mounted on top of the nose, because that's not the engine in the front of the aircraft, and firing through the propeller via a synchronized gear, so they have a slightly lower fire rate, I think, and thus you end up with nose-mounted 50 cal ammunition left over when the wing guns run dry. Of note, as always with this aircraft, it is a lightweight, relatively high engine power fighter, so this is not typical of many of the other multi-role fighters you'll find in the American line, and that is one of the things that makes the entire era series of aircraft stand out and makes them something of a dark horse in the American line. And yet, because they have what may be the most reliable and versatile armament in the game, American 50 cals, with their good rate of fire, their fantastic muzzle velocity, their good ballistics, their good armor penetration qualities, especially for a machine gun, and because this is an American aircraft, plenty of ammunition as well. You end up with an aircraft that can quickly respond to situations. If an enemy fighter jumps us, then there are some things we can actually do, especially if we have a few seconds of heads up, by checking the enemy air spawn, watching chat and the map for activity, and listening for engine sounds, as you'll catch me doing if you keep a keen eye on where I'm looking. I usually visually identify any aircraft engine sounds that I hear, and that definitely pays off. There's a little get good tip for you for free. Identify targets. When you're on the ground and you hear an engine sound, you can check the minimap real quick. That's not quite as convenient when you're dealing with aircraft, but what you can do is snap the camera and hit that free look button and find where that engine sound is coming from. It's not always a good idea to assume that because it's coming from a certain direction, it's friendly. In fact, another trick you can use is when you're doing ground strike, as you see me doing there, you can circle around to the back of the enemy formation and take down targets while they're not looking at you, and they often just assume that you're friendly from the direction that you're flying. Anyway, that's all done, and now it's time for a little bit of squinting and resizing the video. Yes, Colonel Hogan 2, maybe one of the heroes that I've been hearing about, and already picking up his first kill in another Lend-Lease bias machine, the Sherman with the 76mm cannon. This is an all-around solid vehicle. A flat armor face is always helpful, allowing you to angle a bit, especially if your lower side armor is not showing. And the somewhat trolly gun mantlet that is common to most of the 76mm Shermans can also help you quite a bit, especially at longer ranges when you're dealing with things like enemy Tigers or Panzer IVs or any of the number of German vehicles that have a lot of very deadly guns to aim in your direction. Don't count on it though. Your maneuverability, your fantastic gun handling, top of the line for its battle rating of I think 5.0, something like that, and overall a good reload rate, good ballistics on the gun. There's a lot of things going for the 76 Sherman, which is one of the reasons that its battle rating keeps on creeping up to the point where it has something of a ridiculous battle rating at this point, and yet it can even handle some of these ridiculous post-war tanks. In fact, it can handle just about anything that it can face if you can manage to hit weak spots or pull off das Danken Flanken, or I don't know how you would put it in Russian other than deep war. And that is indeed what we're in for today, as Colonel Hogan has already harvested the salty tears of 3 Axis players and counting. One of the coolest things, he's about to get out-biased. One of the coolest things about having the Lend-Lease Sherman available as we do a little bit of teleporting for the USSR is that not only is this a very reasonable vehicle for the Soviets to have access to, as they did utilize quite a number of Shermans, but this is a place where it makes a lot of sense to have a Sherman tank before everybody else got one. And the Soviet one does stand out a little bit. You have that the flat frontal armor that I definitely prefer. It's just a cleaner look, and I enjoy it. And that green color scheme just goes very nicely as well. Add to that the fact that you have the very capable T-34s, starting off with your T-34-85s at the higher supporting battle ratings, as well as some of your KVs and IS tanks showing up fairly quickly after that, and the Sherman having still the best gun handling out of them all, as well as actual gun depression, a low speed stabilizer, and all those other things you hear me talking about whenever I talk about a Sherman, on top of the fact that you have a roof mounted 50 cal that matters more and more with these light skinned post-war glass cannons showing up among the various nations, even at these lower BRs. The Lend-Lease Sherman is not only a fantastic grinder for rank 4 and below vehicles, but it's also capable of harvesting both Silver Lions and the salty tears of your foes, and looking good while you do it, if you ask for my own humble opinion. The Sherman is definitely one of those tanks that just seems to get better and better as the years progress in War Thunder, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. It's just one of those vehicles that fits the meta of War Thunder so well that it will probably never find itself facing a situation that it can't handle one way or another. It might be the top dog medium tank for 5.0, or it might not. Is it 5.3 now? I think it could be. But, you know, don't let Gaijin hear me say that. They keep creeping the battle rating of this thing up and up. But it is a nice, solid all-around tank. I didn't even mention that it has one of the fastest reloads you can find on a cannon of the power that it has. And as you can see, when it does go through, it tends to one-shot things, which is nothing new when it comes to the American 76. The survivability of the tank's not terrible, and you can see that Colonel Hogan has just been in the right place at the right time. If you follow his progress on the mini-map, he's been doing a fantastic job getting in position to intercept foes while they are moving. And even though he does have that single plane stabilizer that is somewhat effective at lower speeds, in fact, if you want to use that to the best of its ability, you can use Cruise Control Gear 1, and if you have not set up cruise control for your vehicles, then I definitely recommend you do so. The Shermans are not the only tanks that benefit from that, but they definitely do very well. It feels like you have a proper stabilizer equipped when you're running in that first gear. Even so, it's better still if you can manage to already be in that ambush position while foes are pushing forward, and that's a bomb. There's only so much you can do against enemy aircraft. Now, moonbearonmeth on the attack, getting some nice 50 cal hits into the B-25J, yet another B-25, this time not Papa Stalin's Soviet golden B-25 bomber, but instead a decadent capitalist pig-dog mobile that is very capable of tanking hits as well as spraying 50 cal defensive fire more than 2.5 kilometers in range. That's rather saucy, wouldn't you say? And even though we heard the sound of some impacts, it looks like Moonbear is just fine. 50 cals can do some pretty ridiculous things to aircraft, but at this range, your chances of surviving a hit are somewhat improved. Even so, definitely does not bode well for anyone that tries to ride the tail of a B-25. You can see that Moonbear came from below Kachiga, his power bottom, and he did not linger for longer. He pulled out and got out the neighborhood, and he still got sprayed a little bit. So, you know, splash zone warning and all that. It definitely behooves an attacking airplane to come at a B-25 from below. They don't have any forward-facing firepower that can hit you from there, and the side gunners would have issues as well. The deadly ball turret on top is right out, and that is the most dangerous if you're not foolish enough to line yourself up for some hits from the twin tail, the Tsundere mount in the tail of the B-25. A couple of 50 cals that are good at spraying and praying and tearing wings or flaming engines and fuel tanks on anything foolish enough to get in that firing arc, which, by the way, the tail firing arc of the B-25 has been increased quite a bit in elevation and depression, so keep that in mind when you face B-25s in the future. Add to that the great survivability of that medium bomber. All these things are things I've talked about before, but it's the first thing that comes to mind when I face the plane in combat. And coming in for the kill, flying above and taking a couple of hits from 50 cals, Moonbear is now in a tricky situation. Excuse me. You wouldn't think that this was going to be ace combat video, and yet Moonbear, getting hungry, already wounded, manages to finish off the B-25 from a disadvantageous position, taking serious damage to his to his Pokrishkin's P-39 Era Cobra, as we hear the excuse me. Oh, got it. Oh, adjust my anatomy here. My legs were falling asleep hard because floor gang. I sit on the floor. And I don't know why I always sit on my legs, because I always have to end up pulling them out from underneath me when they're all tingly and weird feeling and kind of painful. But that's what I do. I'm not a great example of forethought and good judgment all the time, okay? Kind of a creature of habit here. So, Moonbear has a dead engine. You can hear this is actually not the replay bug where engines would always sound dead, but you can see that his wing roots are critted, which thankfully doesn't cause an instant fiery death, because this is not a Lavochkin, and his engine is out. Is he gonna pop gear? Not in time. He's a monocycle now, so he's lost a wing, an engine, his entire tail section, and 2 landing gear in a belly landing, and you would think this would be the end for our Soviet Lend-Lease wonderplane, and yet Papa Stalin winks, and in a few moments, Nigel's very own moonbearonmeth will be back in the air, leading me to believe that the Gaijin team just kind of throw a dart at a dartboard to decide what actually constitutes the death of your aircraft. Plane is damaged beyond repair. Repair is not available. Hold, what is it, J, to return to the hangar? But, yeah, I have no idea. Some airplanes that you should be able to belly land, like Corsairs and P-47s, sturdy airframes, they'll just fly to pieces, or you'll lose a wing and not be able to repair. But in Pokrishkin's P-39, I suppose the fates are more forgiving. Well, I mean, until you get your engine critted again by a Spitfire. Moonbear just can't catch a break. In fact, he's catching a lot more machine gun fire than good luck up until this point. Definitely coming out on top in the excuse me, my throat. Coming out on top in the head-on and managing to completely fireball that Spitfire with his 37mm cannon, this time using the landing gear and getting his gear ripped off again. I mean, because why would you not? The somewhat high center of gravity of the P-39 no doubt causing its landing gear to snap on high-speed landings. under normal circumstances. Is it just me, or does landing gear snap a little bit too easily most of the time in War Thunder, especially when it comes to overspeeding? You would think that like the gear cowling would tear off or something, but no, landing gear that was meant to take like a 6G landing for a 3, 4, 12, I don't know, however many tons aircraft. You go 205 miles per hour, I'm sure the entire thing would just tear off of the airframe, because that's how physics works. But I get what they're going for, right? They don't want you always using your landing gear as an air brake, unless you're in a Corsair. But I guess that's a story for another time. Did you know that Corsair landing gear does not overspeed and rip? Go ahead, try it out for yourself. It's a lot of fun. But this is not that. In fact, we find ourselves facing a J-21, one of the more UFO-esque fighters of this battle rating range. In fact, this might have been before it received an up BR because of its fantastic performance. Even so, at a 3.3, I think, battle rating or is it 3.0? Oh, he's popping the gear for an air brake. He's doing it. Is it gonna rip? Is it gonna rip? Moonbear here pulling off fancy moves against the Swedish UFO, showing that with enough premium bias, you can. I mean, it's premium bias on top of Russian bias. And that J-21 pilot should have just returned to hangar to save himself the time. And he gets some hits. He's still only at 2 kills though, so that J-21 is still in the air. But it's time to face another foe as he takes some shots in a head-on and goes into a somewhat vertical, we'll call that sort of a half rolling scissors into a horizontal loop, rolling over, maybe rolling over. This is just dirty, stanky barroom brawling at this point, and the 37 is the bottle of top shelf whiskey over the dome of the J-21 to take him out of the fight. Yet another, I think this might have been the one that he critted previously. I think he got an engine crit, which is why he switched targets like he did, now moving in to finish off the enemy plane, and it looks like getting a hit with that 37 to take down his rear stabilizer for his 4th air victory of this match in what is realistically his 3rd P-39. So that would be an exciting story for Papa to tell the grandkids. Let me tell you about that time I got 2 planes shot out from underneath me, and I went back up into the skies for Papa Stalin. And the kids are like, for Mother Russia? And he's like, for Mother Russia. Anyway, that's exactly how conversations go along the armchair in Soviet Russia, I'm convinced. But instead of a deep intellectual conversation, we now have Soviet bias versus American bias. And if you think that the golden premium plane is... I couldn't even start. It's too late. The first 50 cal out of his cannon, or sorry, out of his nose finds the wing fuel tank of that P-63 and ends the fight immediately. Anyway, a beautiful ace on over the course of 3 aircraft or 1 aircraft repaired very quickly. You decide. And that wraps it up for today. As always, thanks to the people that send in replays. I was happy to feature 2 today and more as we move into the future. Speaking of, Baby Wix is coming out on probably Monday, so that's going to be pretty crazy, and I might be a little bit busy after that. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye. Say like and subscribe.
Subscribe to the channel.